Good morning and welcome to Friday morning, the 3rd of June today. Already going by fast. The 3rd of June today. Our devotion's entitled The Saints' Hiding Place. The Saints' Hiding Place. Quote from Psalm 138, verse 2. I will bow down toward your holy temple and will praise your name for your unfailing love and your faithfulness. In preparing this book, I researched what past writers have said about the faithfulness of God. Our greatest theologians and preachers have pondered this subject for centuries. In the 1600s, for example, a Puritan named Richard Sibbes wrote a classic sermon on God's faithfulness, which he entitled The Saints' Hiding Place in the Evil Day. The Saints' Hiding Place in the Evil Day. Since it was written 400 years ago, I've taken the liberty of paraphrasing a portion of his message for modern readers. I now want to speak about the quality of God. This is him now putting Richard Sibbes. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last name correctly or not. But here's a portion our authors put in for modern readers. I now want to speak about the quality of God that should move us to trust in him, namely that he is a faithful creator, faithful in his nature, in his word, and in his works. Whenever you read a promise in the Bible, you can say about it, this is a faithful saying. Considering, therefore, that God is so faithful, let us make special use of it. Treasure up all the promises you can of the forgiveness of sins, of protection and preservation, that he will never leave us, but be our God to death, and then consider that he is faithful in performing the same. And in every promise, single out what best suits your present condition. If you are in any great distress, think about the mighty power of God. If you are perplexed about your directions, single out the attribute of God's wisdom and ask him to teach you the way to go. If you are wronged, fly to his justice and say, O God, to whom vengeance belongs, hear and help your servant. When you are disappointed in another, retire to God and to his promises and build upon this, that God will not fail to do anything that may do you good. God's faithfulness will never disappoint you. You will always find in God something to support your soul in the greatest extremity that can befall you. The more we discover God is faithful, the more faithful we will be in trusting him. We should make it a continual act every day of our lives to commit all we have to the Lord's disposal and to see how he discharges that trust committed to him upon all occasions. How faithful he is in delivering us in our greatest extremities and in our worst times. That's the end of the rewording of Richard Sibbes' portion of his sermon. Sibbes' main point remains applicable today. In stormy times, we hide ourselves in the faithfulness of God until the weather changes. He didn't use Psalm 138, 1 and 2 as his primary text, but his message perfectly reflects the theme of those verses. Psalm 138 is ascribed to David, and it's a song of praise about God's faithfulness, the saints' hiding place in difficult days. And appropriately, he closes with this quote from Richard Sibbes. He doesn't always keep us from trouble, but he preserves us in trouble. God's presence and assistance to support his children in trouble is invincible. That must be where a paraphrase of that quote came from that I've heard in the past. It's not in the absence of troubles that we know God is our God. It's in his presence with us in the midst of those troubles that we know him. As I read Sibes' portion, as I read this devotion today, I was reminded that's often the source of our trouble. We don't know our God well enough. We're not in his word deeply enough. We're not feasting on the riches of God's word and finding out who he is and why there is no need to fear. As David put it in Psalm 23, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear because you are with me. Because you are with me. Never forget the faithfulness of God. Get in the Word. Look for all those verses that talk about God's promises and his faithfulness to us, and allow it to steel your soul, strengthen your soul, prepare your soul for what life will bring. Blessings to you today on this Friday.